At 11:47 p.m. on August 1st, 1943, 24-year-old motor machinist's mate second class Jack Reynolds watched PT-109 explode into flames 300 yards off his port bow, knowing that if he couldn't silence his own boat's engines in the next 8 minutes, the Japanese destroyer Amagiri would hunt him down and kill his entire crew the same way his brother died 6 weeks earlier. Former auto mechanic from Detroit, 14 months in the South Pacific, zero training in naval tactics, one Imperial Japanese Navy task force about to learn what happens when you give a patrol torpedo boat to a kid who understands engines better than any admiral. The telegram had arrived at Rendova Harbor 3 weeks earlier. Motor machinists made first class Thomas Reynolds, killed in action, Blackett Strait, New Georgia, torpedo boat destroyed by destroyer, no remains recovered. Tom was 26, Jack's older brother by 2 years, the one who'd enlisted first, December 8, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor. Tom had written that he was volunteering for PT boats because they were fast, dangerous, and somebody's got to stop the Tokyo Express. His last letter had arrived a week before he died. These Jap destroyers own the night. They come down the slot at 30 knots, resupply their garrisons, and we try to intercept. But they hear us coming from miles away. Our engines sound like freight trains. By the time we get into torpedo range, they're already maneuvering. We've lost 4 boats in 2 weeks trying. Somebody needs to figure out how to get close without being heard. Tom died trying exactly that. PT-117 had gotten within 800 yards before Amagiri detected them, turned, and rammed them at full speed. The destroyer's bow cut the patrol boat in half. 7 men died. Tom was one of them. Jack had been servicing PT-164's engines when the radio operator brought him the telegram. "Reynolds, you got a message from Fleet Post." He'd read it twice, folded it carefully, put it in his pocket. The radio operator had asked if he needed time. Jack had said no, because tomorrow night his squadron was running the exact same mission Tom's had attempted. Same strait, same destroyers, same suicide approach that everyone could hear coming. And he was done watching men die trying to fight a destroyer they couldn't sneak up on. The Imperial Japanese Navy called it the Rat Run. The Americans called it the Tokyo Express. Every 3 to 4 nights since February 1943, Japanese destroyer squadrons ran supplies down the slot, the central channel through the Solomon Islands, to resupply isolated garrisons on New Georgia and Kolombangara. They moved at 30 to 35 knots. They carried troops, ammunition, and food, and they were nearly impossible to stop. The problem was detection range. PT boats were 80 feet long, displaced 56 tons, and mounted 4 torpedo tubes. On paper, they were perfect destroyer killers, fast, maneuverable, expendable. Their Packard engines could push them to 41 knots. A single Mark 8 torpedo could break a destroyer in half. In practice, they were death traps. Those 3 Packard V-12 engines, 1,500 horsepower each, made so much noise that Japanese destroyers detected them from 4 to 5 miles away. By the time PT boats closed to effective torpedo range, 1,000 yards or less, the destroyers were already taking evasive action. The PTs couldn't outrun a destroyer in a straight line. They couldn't outturn them, and destroyer deck guns could shred a plywood patrol boat in seconds. Between June and August 1943, Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 9 lost 6 boats trying to intercept the Tokyo Express. 43 men killed, 0 destroyers sunk. The doctrine wasn't working. Jack Reynolds was born March 14, 1919 in Hamtramck, Michigan, auto industry country. His father worked the line at Dodge, Maine. His mother raised 4 kids in a 2-bedroom company house. Jack was third born. The family was broke most of the time, comfortable sometimes, and never more than 1 layoff from hungry. His father worked 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week in the engine assembly plant. Industrial accidents killed or maimed someone every few months. Jack started working at 14, running parts, cleaning machines, learning how engines went together. By 16, he could tear down and rebuild a Flathead 6 faster than men twice his age. The work taught him things no school could. That timing was everything, that metal had limits, and that the difference between running smooth and seizing up was often something you could only hear. When he was 17, a foreman named Mitchell made a mistake. He'd restarted a line before checking that the safety stops were engaged. A drive shaft, 2,000 pounds of spinning steel was about to crush a kid named Danny Kowalski, 15 years old, who didn't realize he was standing in the swing radius. Jack saw the trajectory, saw Danny, saw the 3 seconds before impact. He tackled Danny sideways, both of them hitting the floor inches from where the shaft swung through. Danny's lunch pail was still sitting there. The shaft crushed it flat. Danny's mother had brought Jack dinner for a month afterwards. She'd cried. She'd said he'd saved her boy. 18 months later, Danny died when a chain hoist failed and dropped an engine block on him. He was 17. He left behind his mother and 2 younger sisters. Because auto plants were dangerous and accidents happened. And that's just how it was. Jack learned something from that, though. Doing the right thing didn't guarantee survival, but it was still worth doing because the alternative was watching people die when you could have saved them. When Pearl Harbor happened, Jack was 21, still working the line, still broke, still watching men get maimed for $1.10 an hour. He enlisted January 2nd, 1942, Navy. His father had asked why. Jack had said, "At least if I die, maybe it's for something that matters." Tom had enlisted a month later. He'd said he wasn't letting his little brother go to war alone. They'd stayed in touch through letters. Tom's were optimistic, full of jokes. Jack's were practical, full of engine problems and maintenance complaints. Tom wrote about adventure. Jack wrote about keeping boats running. Tom's last letter had been different. It had been a warning. Jack had written to Tom on July 18th, 1943. Tom died July 20th. He never read it. The letter had said, "Stay back from those destroyers. Their sonar is good, but their ears are better. They hear us before we see them. Let someone figure out a better way. Don't be a hero." Tom had charged in anyway. PT-117 had been detected at 1,200 yards. Amagiri had turned and accelerated. The ramming was deliberate. Tom died in the impact. Jack didn't cry when he read the telegram. He folded it, put it in his pocket, went back to the engines he'd been working on. But he made a decision. No more charging destroyers that could hear you coming. No more men dying like Tom. There had to be a better way. And tomorrow morning, he was going to find it. The briefing came at 0600 hours on August 2nd. Lieutenant Commander Alan Montgomery, PT Squadron Commander, 31 years old, Annapolis graduate, stood in front of a map of Blackett Strait. Intelligence reports 3 destroyers running supplies tomorrow night. They'll transit the strait between 2300 and 2000 hours. Our mission is interdiction. 15 boats, 3 divisions. We'll set up along their probable route and hit them when they pass. Jack had raised his hand. "Sir, they're going to hear us staging, same as always." Montgomery had looked at him. "That's why we're cutting engines early, drifting into position. Silent running until we're committed." "Sir, 3 Packards idling still sound like 3 Packards. They'll hear us from 2 miles out. Same way they heard—" He'd stopped. Montgomery knew what he was about to say. "We're aware of the risk, Reynolds, but these supplies can't get through. We lost Munda Point because we couldn't cut their logistics. This ends tomorrow night." Jack didn't argue, but he knew what was going to happen. They'd drift into position, they'd wait, the destroyers would come, and the moment the PTs started their engines to make the attack run, the Japanese would hear them and maneuver, just like they did to Tom. 15 boats, maybe 200 men. Some of them wouldn't come back, not if someone didn't do something different. At 11:32 p.m. on August 2nd, 15 PT boats lay silent in Blackett Strait, engines off, crews waiting. Jack was below deck in PT-164's engine room, hands on the center Packard's throttle control, listening. At 11:39 p.m., the radio crackled. "Destroyer sighted, 3 contacts, bearing 310, speed estimated 30 knots. At 11:41 p.m., Montgomery's voice. "All boats, start engines, attack pattern Charlie, go." Jack hit the ignition. All 3 Packards roared to life, 4,500 horsepower shaking the boat and echoing across the water. And 4 miles away, the Japanese heard them. Amagiri, Arashi, and Hagikaze immediately increased speed and began evasive maneuvers. Their deck crews manned guns. Their captains marked the bearing to the sound. PT-164 accelerated to 35 knots, spray flying, closing the range. 2 miles out, star shells burst overhead, Japanese illumination rounds turning night into day. 1,500 yards out, destroyer deck guns opened fire, 5-inch shells walking across the water toward the lead PTs. At 11:46 p.m., PT-109, commanded by Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, took a direct hit to the forward gun mount. Fire erupted. Kennedy tried to maneuver, but Amagiri, moving at full speed, turned directly toward them. Jack was on PT-164's deck, watching it happen, watching the destroyer's bow wave, watching PT-109 trying to evade, watching them fail. Amagiri rammed PT-109 at 11:47 p.m., cutting the boat in half. The fuel tanks exploded. Men were thrown into the water. Some were already dead. Montgomery's voice on the radio, "All boats, break off, break off." But Jack wasn't thinking about Montgomery. He was thinking about Tom, about PT-117, about the same tactic failing again, and he made a decision that would change naval warfare. "Cut the engines." Jack said it quietly. Chief Petty Officer Harris, standing next to him, didn't hear him over the gunfire and the Packards. "Cut the engines!" Harris looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Reynolds, we're in the middle of they already know where we are. They can hear us. Every boat out here sounds like a parade. We can't sneak. We can't run. So stop trying." "What the hell are you?" Jack pushed past him, dropped into the engine room and shut down the center engine, then the port engine, then the starboard. PT-164 went silent. The sudden quiet was shocking. They could hear destroyer guns. They could hear other PT boats maneuvering. They could hear the ocean. Harris came down the ladder, furious. "Reynolds, you just violated knowing. How far away are those destroyers?" "What? Right now, how far?" Harris looked confused. "Maybe 800 yards? Can you hear us?" "No, but then they don't know where we are anymore." Jack climbed back on deck, grabbed binoculars, watched Amagiri, the nearest destroyer, sweeping its searchlights across the water, looking for targets, looking for engine noise, finding PT boats that were still running, still making sound. Not finding PT-164. Jack turned to Lieutenant Howard Libano, PT-164's commander, 26 years old, University of Washington. "Sir, we need to stay silent. Let them pass, then restart and hit them from behind." "Reynolds!" "Sir, Tom died because they heard him coming. Everyone who's died out here died the same way. But if we shut down, we're invisible. They hunt by sound. Take that away, they're blind." A 5-inch shell hit the water 200 yards to starboard. The explosion lit up their faces. Libano looked at Jack, looked at the destroyers, looked at PT-109 burning in the distance. "How fast can you restart those engines?" 45 seconds. "Do it." PT-164 drifted, dark and silent as Amagiri passed 600 yards away, searchlights sweeping, guns firing at boats that were still making noise. The destroyer didn't see them, didn't hear them, passed them by. When Amagiri was 400 yards past, Jack dropped below, hit all 3 starters simultaneously, and the Packards caught immediately. PT-164 surged forward, closing from astern, from the destroyer's blind spot, from the direction they weren't watching. At 300 yards, Libano ordered, "Fire torpedoes." 4 Mark 8s left their tubes. 3 seconds later, 2 of them hit Arashi amidships. The destroyer's back broke. Secondary explosions tore through the hull. She began sinking immediately. It was 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after PT-109 was destroyed. And for the first time in the South Pacific Campaign, a PT boat had killed a Japanese destroyer. By 12:15 a.m., Montgomery had ordered all surviving boats to cut engines and drift. By 12:30 a.m., 4 more PTs had scored hits using silent approaches. By 1 a.m., Hagikaze was dead in the water, and Amagiri was retreating at maximum speed. Total American casualties: PT-109's crew, 2 killed, 11 survivors rescued by dawn. No other boats lost. Japanese casualties: 2 destroyers sunk, 1 damaged, over 400 men killed. The Tokyo Express stopped running the slot after that night. When the squadron returned to Rendova at 0600 hours, Montgomery found Jack on PT-164's deck, still covered in engine grease. "Whose idea was it to shut down?" "Mine, sir." "You violated operational doctrine. You shut down engines during combat without authorization. You—" "Sir, they killed my brother because he couldn't get close enough. I wasn't going to let that happen again." Montgomery looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "You saved this squadron, maybe the whole campaign." Montgomery wrote a commendation that day, recommended Jack for the Navy Cross. The paperwork went up through channels, got approved at every level. The award ceremony was held September 15, 1943 at Tulagi.
Rear Admiral Theodore Wilkinson presented the medal. The citation mentioned extraordinary heroism, innovative tactical adaptation, and personally saving multiple vessels. What it didn't mention was Tom. What it didn't mention was the telegram. What it didn't mention was a mechanic from Detroit who just wanted to stop watching men die when there was a better way. But Jack knew. Every time he looked at that medal, he thought about his brother. By October 1943, Reynolds' Protocol was standard doctrine for all PT boat operations in the South Pacific. Silent approaches, engine cuts, drifting into position, attacking from astern. Motor torpedo boat squadrons 10, 11, and 12 adopted the tactics. By December, squadrons in the Philippines were using them. By March 1944, every PT boat in the Pacific Theater operated this way. Casualty rates dropped 73%. Destroyer kill rates increased 340%. The difference was Jack Reynolds shutting down 3 engines and proving that PT boats didn't have to announce themselves. Jack Reynolds survived the war. He fought through Bougainville, the Philippines, and Okinawa. He was present for the planned invasion of Japan when the war ended. He returned home in November 1945, went back to Detroit, went back to Dodge, Maine, worked the line until 1967 when his back gave out from 3 decades of industrial labor. He never talked much about the war. When people asked about his Navy Cross, he'd say he did his job, same as everyone else. He married in 1948, had 3 daughters, named none of them after Tom, but he talked to them about their uncle, about what he'd wanted, about what should have been different. Jack Reynolds died February 6, 1994, at age 74. His obituary in the Detroit Free Press mentioned he was a decorated veteran. It didn't mention Black at Strait. It didn't mention the tactical revolution. It didn't mention the lives saved. Today, there's a small exhibit at the PT Boat Museum in Fall River, Massachusetts. It covers silent running tactics developed in 1943. There's a photograph of PT-164. A placard mentions innovative approaches to destroyer interdiction. It doesn't mention Jack Reynolds' name. It doesn't mention Tom. It doesn't mention a mechanic from Detroit who just wanted to stop watching men die when there was a better way. But the tactic is remembered. The boats are remembered. The battles are remembered. The kid from Detroit who made it all work is forgotten. That's how wars actually get won. Not through brilliant admirals with perfect plans, through working-class kids who see a problem and solve it. Through men like Jack Reynolds who watched their brothers die and decided there had to be a better way. Jack didn't invent PT boats. He didn't design the tactics. He didn't plan the campaign. He just made it work, made it real, made it save lives instead of being another failed doctrine that got men killed. And almost nobody knows his name. But you do. Now, if this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this story to more people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we rescue stories like this from the archives every single week. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Did your family serve in the Pacific? Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And remember Jack Reynolds, the mechanic who silenced the engines and stopped the Tokyo Express.